In the age of chaos, two factions battled for dominance.
Warcraft 1 was before my time. I grew up on Warcraft 2 and StarCraft, but a part of me has always wanted to go back and play the original. I did a few years ago, and I remember it being jank but fun, but with both Warcraft 1 and 2 in easily playable form available from GOG, let's take a good look at this game to see if it's still a gem or if its shine truly has dulled with time. I will be showing some gameplay clips from both campaigns, but if you want to see the full game, I will be uploading long plays of both campaigns alongside this video, so check the links in the description or at the end of the video to see what playing the game actually looks like. Before we even get into the game, the manuals are early mid-90s quality, back when the manual was one of the reasons to actually buy the game instead of pirate it. The game split the manual into two, one for humans, one for orcs. The manual talks about the usual stuff for the time, info on all the units and spells, required system specs, and you get a fun short walkthrough of the controls where it tells you to start a campaign, move around your units, and even attack your own buildings to show how combat and repairing work. The cool part though is that each manual also includes that faction's backstory and explanation of the events leading up to the game. The human story is written by Sir Lothar and talks about the rise of the Dark Sorcerer Medivh and the surge of power that let the orcs into the world. The orc story is written by half-orc Garona and details what the orcs were like before the portal, how they entered the portal to Azeroth, and the rise of the war chief Blackhand. The stories are fairly simple, but they provide a ton of context and flavor, and do a great job of setting the scene. If you were reading this while waiting for the game to install, you knew how good of a time you were going to have. The intro cutscene is simple but solid. Classic voiceover by Bill Roper, who actually does every single voice in the game, by the way. Solid visuals for the time, and even to this day, it holds a sort of retro charm. Once we enter the game, we're given a choice of human or orc campaign, and that's it. No difficulty settings, no mission select if you played before, just straight into the campaign at mission 1. Now, the game doesn't make this explicitly clear, but despite the orc campaign getting top billing and being the canon story, the human campaign is significantly easier for two main reasons which I'll get into later. Each campaign consists of 12 missions, each one with narrated intro that explains your goal, and this cool 3D map that fills in with every mission you play. The objectives are almost always kill all enemies, but every once in a while you'll get a more unique objective, like building 6 farms and a barracks, or leaving the enemy tower alive while destroying the rest of their base. There are no ways to check your objectives once you're in the mission though, so you'd best pay attention. The intros are only about a minute long at most though, and the voiceover is classic Warcraft, so it isn't really much of a chore to sit through. Inside the game proper, the first and probably last thing you're going to notice is that controlling anything is excruciating compared to modern games. No smart action, no context-sensitive cursor, no right-click to move, not even drag mouse to scroll. If you want a unit to move, you select them, press the move command, then choose where you want them to go. Want to attack? Select your units, only up to 4 and no group hotkeys. Press the attack button, then click on the unit that you want to attack. Units are generally smart enough to attack on their own when an enemy's in range or attacks them first, but you'll often find your melee units will constantly just chill with enemies 1 or 2 squares away, content to watch their friends die because I guess they're on a union-mandated break or something. Most players nowadays will likely see this control scheme and quit, and I don't blame them. For this reason alone, I can only recommend this game as a curiosity, a time-worn classic that's rough not just around the edges, but at its very core. Yet still, if you can push through and adjust the controls, there's still some good fun to be had. Beyond this, the game begins feeling incredibly slow. Luckily, you can adjust the game speed at any time from the menu. If you aren't sure about your ability to control things, a slower speed helps make up the difference versus the AI, but the fastest speed actually feels pretty smooth. I left the game on fastest for most of the time, only dropping the speed for certain no-build missions. The next thing you'll notice is the fog of war, or rather, the lack thereof. You have black map hiding unexplored areas, but any area you have ever seen on the map becomes permanently visible to you, making scouting at least the surrounding of your base incredibly important to see enemy attacks coming. Just don't be like me and scout too far too early, leading enemies back to your base and causing you to lose the first mission. That leads to my next point of frustration. Workers can't attack. If you run out of combat units, you are absolutely helpless against even a single grunt or footman. I actually lost the very first orc mission because I didn't know this, and I got my grunts killed before an enemy attack came to my base. Not my finest moment. If attacked, a worker will completely forget everything it's doing and run 10 or so steps directly away from whatever is attacking them. If they stop getting attacked, they'll just stop there and not continue doing anything else. This is absolutely awful. It usually leads to their deaths, as running in a straight line away from the attacker will usually draw the enemy further from your troops, and even if they don't die, they'll need to be refound and retasked, leading to a lot of lost mining time. And while we're on the subject of workers, the AI pathing it's there. Units can move 8 directions, but they form solid walls, and since buildings need to be built next to your main road, you'll often see your peasants and peons just give up in the middle of your base and block the path for everyone else. Any sort of obstacle will also prove problematic for pathing. If a forest is in the way of a gold mine, for instance, you're going to want to chop a path through, or your lazy peons will find a nice corner to fall asleep in. In the winding cave levels, you can even see the computer AI having issues getting its units to you from across the map. Bottom line, if you want your units to go where you want them to, make sure you can move them in a straight, unobstructed line. Back to the campaigns, I said the human campaign was significantly easier for 2 reasons. The first is the maps themselves. There are significantly more resources available on human maps than on orc maps for whatever reason. Just look at the number of gold mines here compared to the number of gold mines on this orc map. These are the same mission number. They should be relatively equivalent if the missions are meant to be a similar difficulty, but they aren't. There's not more gold in the orc mine than the human mine. If anything, there's probably more gold in the human mine too. The second reason the human campaign is significantly easier is that the human units are significantly better than orc units. Archers have 1 more range than spearmen, and healing is by far a better value engine than raised dead, because your own soldiers are always going to be much stronger than skeletons. While mass spearmen can be somewhat effective, mass archers are just better. Orc units, I think, deal slightly more damage to compensate, but the difference doesn't feel very impactful. Humans in late game also have access to Invisibility, a short duration spell that makes your units completely undetectable until the spell breaks or until they attack. While it's hard to utilize against the AI itself uses it to incredibly annoying effect against you during the orc campaign, raiding your peon lines endlessly, or even getting behind your army to attack your casters and catapults. The only time I would say orcs have an advantage is that unholy armor is incredibly strong for straight up fights, making your units temporarily unable to die, and daemons have so much more damage than water elementals that they become effectively unstoppable. This can make the last few human missions more challenging, but I would still rather deal with all of that than invisible knights and archers appearing inside my base constantly from halfway through the campaign on. Speaking of endgame, because of control limits and other issues, major summoning is just the optimal way to play. Mass conjurers or warlocks, summon wave after wave of demons or water elementals, and throw them into your opponent's armies or bases. Free units are already a decent value proposition when the summoner is only 900 gold, only 50 more gold than a rider, and the same cost as a catapult without the wood cost. When those free units are capable of taking on several riders solo, and are the only units tough enough to survive a direct catapult hit and survive, it's a no-brainer, and it also kind of ruins the game when it becomes available. Just survive until you can rush a tower in major summoning, then spam casters and summon away. It takes minimal control of your units, and the cost to output ratio is insanely favorable. Like most Blizzard RTS, the campaigns consist of a number of regular missions and a number of no-build missions where you aren't given any peasants or peons and instead have a limited number of units to complete the objective. These missions are themed very well, feeling like RPG dungeon crawls, going into the Dead Mines, Medivh's Tower, a bandit-filled keep, or a late-game raid on a town with a massive army. They're fun, but they can feel stressful, so much so that I often dropped the mission speed just to make sure my control skills could keep up with the AI. As for the story, on its own merits, it's fine, but the most interesting things, like the opening of the portal or Medivh's curse, are all explained in the manual and not in the game itself. In the human storyline, you take down Medivh, King Lane is killed, and then you storm Blackrock Spire to take down War Chief Blackhand, afterwards debating how to deal with the portal and the world beyond. None of this is canon, by the way. Surprisingly, or not, because sequel setup is everything, the Orc victory is canon. Blackhand is taken down by the player character Warchief, assumedly Orgrim Doomhammer as named in Warcraft 2. The Kingdom of Azeroth falls with the death of King Lane at Stormwind Keep, and the Orcs plot for their next move, sailing across the sea to attack the Kingdoms of Lordaeron, but that's a tale for Warcraft 2. So overall, how does Warcraft 1 hold up? The controls are archaic, the difficulty is inconsistent, and the balance is weighted quite favorably towards the humans, but overall, I really enjoyed replaying the game. The story is simple but engaging enough, the feeling of accomplishment upon winning is strong, and like a lot of old games, by the end of it you feel like you've learned a new skill in figuring out how to play the game. Is it for everyone? Absolutely not. Is it worth playing for the story? Not particularly, especially because basically none of it's even canon anymore if you follow World of Warcraft. But despite all of that, I still had fun. It's a great game to just pick up and play and enjoy. It's no wonder that it succeeded for the time, and sometimes just being fun is all that matters. Thank you for watching my review of Warcraft Orcs and Humans. If you want more reviews of old games, leave your comments below, and maybe I'll get around to it. If you want to see my full long plays of Warcraft 1, I've linked the videos in this end card, so do go check those out. And until next time, this is Mithril Zenith, signing out.